How did you finally get caught?
I resigned in 1988. So,
Well, let's actually talk about that. There was a
okay, yeah.
resigned. There's warning signs.
Yeah,
There's
okay.
yet another choice, yet another crossroads.
Yes, okay.
What was the calculation? What was the choice to be made?
To give a little background, it was 1988, and I thought they would my time in the U.S. would soon end because I thought 10 to 12 years. It was already past 10 years. There was no indication that they indicated, that they said, we're done. You're done. But in December of 1988, I got this one thing that I never wanted to see. So we had a system of signals that either one of those diplomat agents could set at a spot that I pass by every day, or I could set where they would pass by, like on their way from where they lived to the United Nations, for instance, and would just drive. So, and mine was the signal spot for me was on a support beam for the elevated A train in Queens, and it was morning in December that I walked by there and routinely look at it, and I never expected anything. And there was this red dot. It was about the size of my fist with a, red paint. And since you have done it already, I think I can curse in this moment because it's the only way I can really indicate how I felt. I said, "Oh shit," because that was the danger signal.
Yes.
It was like, you are in severe danger of, and you need to get out of the country as soon as possible. There was a protocol that I was supposed to follow. I wasn't even supposed to go home. I just was supposed to get my reserve documents that I had hidden in a park in the Bronx, and make a beeline to the Canadian border. I wasn't ready. So I just ignored this thing. I mean, I couldn't ignore it, but I went on to work. Got on the A train, went to work, and then went to my cubicle and stared at the computer screen all day because I couldn't think. I could think only about what to do. The reason for this indecisiveness was that I was a father at the time. I was my little girl by the name of Chelsea was 18 months old, and I was there when she was born. I took her to the home. I watched her grow up. I watched her take the first steps and always look at me with these big eyes, lovingly look at me. And that is when I started my re-entry into the human race, because I just fell in love with this girl. That's when love came back, and it was completely unexpected. And there's a lot of fathers who understand, particularly fathers of girls who understand what happened there. And I still thought I need to go back because there was probably some danger, but I hadn't figured out how to take care of the girl. I leave her, but maybe she need to have a good life and grow up and have a chance. And her mother she was from South America. She had a 4th grade education. That would have not worked very well. So I played for time. I could be sick. I couldn't, I could be in a hospital. There was a precedent where I was sick, where I couldn't communicate for about 3 weeks. So I just did nothing. That was on a Monday. On a Thursday was my regular shortwave transmission. I listened, and they explained a little in a few sentences. We have reason to believe that the FBI is on your case. You need to execute the emergency procedure. Come home right away. I still had some time because the radio could be broken, or the transmission was bad, or I still could be in a hospital, right? So I gave myself some more time, and then something happened where they forced my hand. It's the only time that a Soviet agent was anywhere near me on the territory of the United States. So I'm waiting for the A train on a dark morning still in Queens, and there's this man, the short man in a black trench coat, comes up to me from my right, and he whispers into my ears, "You got to come back, or else you're dead." I can't imitate the Russian accent. That was a Russian accent. So now, and it was a pretty strong accent. The "you're dead" phrase can have two meanings. And an American would have said, "or else you're busted," or else you get arrested, or else you're dead is very strong. Mm-hmm. So now you have to take it seriously to some degree, because I knew that they had a history of assassinating, or at least trying to assassinate, defectors. So that obviously raised the stakes a little bit. But I just talked myself into believing this was just a bad phrasing. Yeah. And but at this point, I knew and they knew that we both knew, right? So there was no more guessing. He found me. He talked to me. I know. So now I had to act. So in the next radiogram, I was asked to execute a dead drop operation where they would give me money and a passport. And that was in a park on Staten Island. It was a location that I found and I described. And I was always praised for my ability to describe spots that are easy to find. So that was a given. So, and the only thing that was different in this for this operation, they scheduled it for the dark. All right. So, but it was still no problem, because it was in a park and a couple of about 100 yards in next to a fallen tree. It would be hard to miss. So I go to Staten Island. I read the signal that said I put the container in the drop. That was the protocol. There's a signal that the person who hands over something puts at a spot not too far from the spot itself. That means I would go in and just pick it up. The reason I actually went to pick up this container, because there was money in it. So I didn't have to make a decision yet. Okay, I could throw away the passport. It was like I was still trying to figure out what to do. So I get to the spot, I get to the tree, and I had a flashlight with me. The park, there was nobody in the park. It was, even during the day, this park was not. It was more almost like a little forest, and I don't see the container. It was supposed to be a crushed oil can. Pretty sizable, not hard to miss. And I do a double take, and I look again, and I look around a little more, see if they misplaced it. I can't find it. That's the only one that one of those operations failed. And that just doesn't make a lot of sense. So as I'm walking away from this, like sort of numb emotionally, I said to myself, I'm staying.
Yeah.
That decision.
Some kind of signal, some kind of a muse just spoke to you. That
decision was made for me. Now, you know that I'm a Christian now, and I think that was like, God told me this. Mm-hmm. You know.
But it was certain there. It was right there. It was
that was it.
That was it.
That was it. And so what I did well, first of all, divine intervention helped me to find a good explanation. I sent them my last letter with secret writing. I communicated to them. I said, I wish I could come, but I can't because I have contracted HIV/AIDS. That was the best lie ever, because nobody wanted to have AIDS in their country. Because those days it was a death sentence, right? Yes. And I knew we had conversations when I was back in Moscow, how they were snickering about what's going on in the United States. That depraved culture, and you see, then they're killing each other.
And the depraved culture took over your being and
Yes.
how you're saying.
No, and I was convincing enough. I even traced it back to a girlfriend I had once that I had actually reported on, that she, I interacted with this lady who had a boyfriend at one point who was a drug addict, and she was infected, and she infected me. So they believed it. They sent, and I asked them to give my dollar savings to my German family. They gave them some, but they they told my family that I already passed away, that I'm dead. They believed it 100%. And I guess the agent who took the money took half of it for himself. So that was it. And the next 3 months, I made sure that I wasn't reliably at the same spot in the same time frame. So I went to work in different paths at different times, just to, just a safety measure, so to speak, and not huge, but it allowed me to keep my sanity. And obviously, after I sent the letter, I threw the shortwave radio in the Hudson River, destroyed the one-time pads that I still had. So I was now ready to
for a new life.
For a new life, and live out my life as an American, undiscovered, but starting to work on my version of the American dream.
Yes.
And the first action was I was telling my wife, the mother of this child, she always wanted to have a house, and said, you know what, we should buy a house. And a year later, we moved into the suburbs, and then I said we should have another child, and we had another child. So, and I had a career where I did pretty well. I moved a couple of times, wound up in a McMansion. But before that, my second house was actually in Pennsylvania, in rural Pennsylvania. And this is where I was discovered by the FBI. And how did they know about me? If it hadn't been for this defector, Barsky Mitrokin, who was an archivist in the KGB archives, he was actually pretty high level. He was in charge of the relocation of the archive from Lubyanka to Yasinovo. And he really hated he had reason to believe he hated the Soviet system. I think I remember that his son was quite ill, and he could have gotten treatment in England, and he was not allowed to travel to England with his son. So his hatred, he tried to figure out what to do and how to do damage to that system. So he started copying notes, little slips of paper, handwritten, that he smuggled out in his underwear and his socks over the years. And then he transcribed them with a typewriter, and then put the pieces of paper into some kind of a container and buried this in his dacha. It was, I believe, in 1992 when he showed up. That was already the Soviet Union was gone. So he showed up at the U.S. Embassy in Moscow and told him what he had. And it was on a weekend, and apparently there was a junior person in charge. And he said, you know what you got, we're not interested in. It's really old. That's a career-limiting move, right? Because Barsky Mitrokin then made his way to one of the Baltic republics and contacted MI6. And they said, come on in, old fellow, we'll have a cup of tea. And so they managed to get this stuff out of the dacha and get it to England. And eventually the MI6 shared it with the FBI, and there wasn't a whole lot of information about me. It was very, very little. It was like there's a person by the name of Jack Barsky who is an illegal operating in the northeast of the United States. Now, if it was Jim Miller, they wouldn't have found me. Jack Barsky was easy to find. So they checked Social Security, and Jack Barsky had gotten his Social Security card at the age of 33. Bingo, okay? All they knew, though, was that I wasn't illegal, that I was still living there. They didn't know whether I was active, inactive. And the other thing that they knew, that I was a really, really well-trained agent because I was still there, right? So they took, I think, almost 3 years to investigate me, watch me from a distance, because, if I was still active, I would have found out that somebody's investigating me.
So you started being less and less active in terms of.
I stopped completely.
No, what I mean is.
Surveillance detection mode?
Yes, surveillance detection.
After 3 months, I stopped altogether.
Okay.
Yeah, good point.
And FBI is still very careful.
They were very careful. They pretty much watched me, and at one point, I had a house in the country with one neighbor. At one point, that house was for sale, so the FBI bought it. And they put a couple of agents there and just to keep a closer eye on me. There was no indication that I was still active, but they were still cautious. And but at one point they were able to plant a bug in my kitchen, a listening device. And my wife and I didn't get along very well. There was a lot of friction, and she was constantly complaining about things. And, I got sick and tired of it. And one day we had an argument in the kitchen, and I chose to deploy the nuclear option. And that is telling her what I sacrificed to be with her, so she would understand that I am there on her side.
Yeah.
I'm supporting her. If something doesn't quite fit, it is not because I don't love the both of them, Chelsea and Penelope. So when I said that, the listening device was active, so the FBI was hearing my confession. I was once a KGB agent, blah 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 blah, and I quit because and then stayed here because of you and Chelsea, and that also made it clear to the FBI that I wasn't active anymore. So they had both of that. So now they knew an attempt to turn me would have been useless because you turn somebody who's active. But they figured there was enough reason to treat me nicely because they figured that I had a lot of information that was as aged as it was, but it was still important for the FBI to get to know. And so one day, it was a Friday evening, I'm driving back home from the office, and I'm being stopped by a state police as I'm going through the toll. It's a bridge over the Hudson, and they had to pay a toll. And he waved me. He got me right where I stopped, and he said, "Could you please move over here? It's a routine traffic stop." I thought nothing of it. I had forgotten at that point that I once was a spy. It was like it was gone. And then he said, "Could you please step out of the car?" That should have aroused my suspicion. That's unusual, right? Routine traffic stop. Yeah, I did it, no problem. And then again, somebody came from the right, came into my view, and he flipped this ID and he said, "FBI, we would like to have a talk with you." This is my now friend Joe Riley, who actually is he's the godfather of Trinity, my last child. But anyway, he told me later that when I heard that phrase, all the blood left my face. I became totally white. But I recovered very quickly, and he said it himself. So, they took me to a vehicle, and there was another agent in the vehicle, and he had a gun strapped to his ankle, so it was pretty real. First question I had, so am I under arrest? And the answer was no. And then my instinct kicked in, and my ability to operate in very well under high pressure situations. And I asked him, so what took you so long? You know, the intent of that was to diffuse any kind of tension.
Yes.
And I saw a smile.
Yeah. Instant friends.
Yeah, well, I knew that I had to make them like me, and I think by now I know I'm a pretty likable person. So
Yeah, I would say so.
And I when they took me to a motel, which they had rented, there was the two wings at a right angle. They had one. They bought all the rooms in one wing, and they had a guard at each end of that wing, and they took me in the middle. And there were some props there, some binders with labels, and I immediately thought, this is pretty silly, because what I noticed that the labels all referred back to my early years. I knew that they didn't know much else. Mm-hmm. So I told Joe that afterwards, and that was not a great idea. But anyway, but I volunteered. I made the following statement before we even started the interview. I said, I know there's only one way for me and my family to have a chance to get through here without much damages if I'm completely 100% cooperative, and it is my intent to do exactly that. All right, so we spent about 2 hours in the interview. They allowed me to call my wife, tell her that I'm going to be late. That indicated to me already that they would let me go. And after 2 hours, they let me go. But they had the area covered with a whole bunch of people. And the head of that team talked to me and he said, if you think of running, we got every intersection in this area covered. You can't. I didn't say anything, but, I had no thought of running. So, and that was the beginning of another phase of my life where I was cooperating with the FBI for quite a while and living still undercover for several years until I had real good documentation and became an American citizen 7 years ago.
From today, 7 years ago. So recently.
Yeah.
Wow.
Quite recent. The bureaucracy took a long time to figure out how to make me real and also not put me in these witness protection program, to keep my name and then just, make everything like official. So, for instance, I had to change my birth year simply because if Jack Barsky was born in 1944. If I kept 1944, the FBI would have helped me commit a crime because I would have collected Social Security of 4 years sooner. Right. So, and anyway,
details of that nature.
Yes, it took quite a while, and when I finally got the call from the Office of Homeland Security, the lady says, "This is Agent so and so from Homeland Security. Can you come to the office tomorrow?" And I said, "Let me look at my calendar." And then I said, "Wait a minute, what am I talking about? What time do you want me to be there?" Because I had waited for that moment for a long time, and I was sworn in right then and there. It was a good feeling to walk out of there because I had a country again, and I love this country just as much as you said you love it, with all its warts and its problems that we're going through right now. And then the last thing that changed my life again, and I don't want to get into details because it's a little complicated story. I never wanted to be a public person. And then I was discovered through a number of dots that were unlikely to be connected. It had to do with a relative, with a half brother of my wife, who lives in Germany. Was taken to Germany by his mother, who came to visit somebody, not us, but that somebody that he came to visit lived 50 miles from our house, and that my wife and this half brother never met in person before. They knew about each other through social media, and when he found out my background, he was a conductor of the German railroad at the time. He said, "Oh, this is a big story. That's going to be big, big, big." Yeah, okay. Well, he happened to know this one person who happened to know one of the star reporters of Der Spiegel. And after she did some research and determined that I was real, she was on my case. And she happened to know Steve Croft, the guy from 60 Minutes. You see all these connections? I had nothing to do with it.
That's how life works. Dots get connected somehow. Sometimes.
Yeah.
For most of us, it doesn't.
Stuff happens.
You get lucky.
You don't know
You've gotten
what's
lucky
happening.
a few times in your life.
Yeah, I think must be part Irish too. Yeah, so it's been an interesting ride. I'm just still shaking my head about all the stuff that happened.